The word orphanage does not hold any real meaning until you see and hear the people who live there. There was this little girl that I met. Her name is Pushpa. She arrived at the orphanage, which is called Auntie Home, just about 2 months before I reached there, and she was really quiet and subdued. And I tried to talk to her, but she would just respond, and there was barely a smile on her face, right? So I wanted to find out her story, so I asked the founder of the orphanage about her. And it turned out that before she was brought to the orphanage, she's lost both her parents in a car accident, and she was taken in by her uncle, who sexually abused her. Okay? She was about like the size, and she's 6 years old. She's actually one of the girls in the picture over there. I will not point out which one it is. Another baby, there was another story of a baby who arrived just a couple of weeks before I reached the orphanage. She was left there by her grandmother, who was too poor and quite uninclined to care for her. The baby was, I think, about a few weeks old, and she was having severe breathing difficulties. The founder of the orphanage was quite busy rushing her to the hospital, having the doctor look at her. But unfortunately, by the time I arrived in Auntie Home in Carrie, she's not around anymore. She didn't survive. But I got to know about her because just before I arrived, BBC was there to film a documentary. And she was captured in that documentary. That's the baby girl I'm talking about. So, I was 25 years old back then, a few years ago, and I went to India thinking I'll meet some kids at orphanage, have a good time, teach them some English, and maybe make the world a little better. But what I got when I came away is, I got haunted by pictures of dead babies, right? Yeah, it breaks my heart to have to show this to you, but I think I will continue. Yeah, I get haunted, by the stories I got to see and hear of girls who face a very different set of problems from us here in Singapore. They're not worrying about pimples or misunderstandings with friends or their exams and what to wear for graduation prom. They have worries that unless we learn about and speak about and do something about, they're not going to be alright. I went back to Carrie recently, a few weeks back, and I met a young mother. Look at her. When I saw her, I thought she's like maybe 14 years old because she's really small and thin and petite. But when I spoke to her, I found out that she's actually 18, and the little boy she's holding there is her son, who was 2 years old, which means she gave birth to her at 16. Her name is Ramalakshmi, and when I found her, she was at the orphanage going through some embroidery training, which is what the orphanage does by providing some life skills to people, to young girls like herself. And Ramalakshmi is actually one of many young women in India who are married off at a young age. And that's due to the perception in India that daughters and girls are a liability for the family. So they married off if they survive, like if they're not killed at birth, which is what we saw in the previous slide. That's the body of a baby girl in a well. If they live, girls as young as 12 years old are married to grown men, 30, 35 years of age, sometimes older. And often their education is disrupted as they are then expected to perform the role of a good wife, of keeping house and bearing children. Imagine your Sec 1 schoolmates here, giving birth, bearing children, sometimes 3 by the time they're your age. So they are faced with this kind of pressures exerted on them, sometimes from their own mothers. There's another story of a girl in such a circumstance that she was beaten up at home by her husband, and she ran away and came to the orphanage for help. The police was involved because her husband and mother-in-law came looking for her. And the police resolved the case, by giving her a choice to go back to her husband's house for 3 days and then decide if she would like to stay there or to continue her schooling in nursing home. So it seemed like she was given a fair chance, an option to choose for herself. But in those 3 days, well, maybe not 3 days, in the first day that she was home, she was stripped naked, abused, and beaten up by her husband. And fortunately, the brave girl that she is, she attempted another escape and she ran again to RT Home. And this time, the workers at RT Home just didn't trust local police anymore to let her go back. And they fought for her case. And this is one of the more lucky cases in which the matter was investigated thoroughly and her husband was arrested. Many such stories happen all around parts of India. And many more girls just like yourselves, 14, 15, 16 years old, like Ramalashmi, like that girl who ran to RT Home. They suffer the same situations. And often, they continue suffering when they do not know of organizations to run to. Many of these girls are abused, and truth be told, sometimes killed by their husbands and their mothers-in-law. It is not uncommon to have kerosene poured on their bodies and have them set fire to by the people closest to them. When I was there another day, I saw this grown woman. She had this really sad look and these broken eyes, right? And when I looked at her closely, there were these scars all over her arms and her neck, and I could see that through her sari. And she was burnt. She was the victim of being burnt in kerosene by her husband. And even today, it's not uncommon for girls who reject marriage proposals to have acid thrown at them and to suffer disfigurement and pain. And be in a society where, although there are laws to protect them, the laws don't work because the system is corrupt. So I think most of those smiles that I made earlier has just been wiped out by these realities and these stories of girls and women like us who live in a very different world with very different problems. And they're not going to be alright like you. Not unless someone like you cares a whole damn lot and decide to do something about it. You may be familiar with this line if you've seen this movie. And it's true that